Today, my guest is Kira Willey. Kira is the author of 6 children's mindfulness books, including the best-selling Breathe Like a Bear. Her books have been translated into 18 languages and have sold more than 260,000 copies around the world. As a kids yoga and mindfulness expert with 2 decades of teaching experience, Kira has spoken on TEDx stages, trained thousands of kids yoga teachers, and supports educators bringing mindful practices to children through her Rockin' Yoga membership. Kira is also a talented musician. She's released 6 albums of yoga and mindfulness songs for kids, but I also personally love them very much as an adult. She's also the creator and host of 2 kids' TV programs, Breathe With Me and Fireflies Yoga, which air on PBS affiliates nationwide. Kira and I connect over our love of bringing social and emotional learning into schools. We're both big fans of prevention and early intervention, and we share a passion for getting mindfulness and yoga tools into the hands of people who can use them most. Kira is also offering How We Can Heal listeners free children's mindfulness and music resources. You can get those goods at kirawilley.com/heal podcast. That's KIRAWILLEY.com/heal podcast. There you'll get access to 30 free children's mindfulness exercises, 11 pages of printable mindfulness activities, and tons of other special gifts. Let's welcome Kira to the How We Can Heal podcast. Hello, and welcome to the How We Can Heal podcast. My name is Lisa Danylchuk, and I created this podcast to share deep conversations that encourage us to move through life's toughest circumstances. Let's get talking about how we can heal. Hi, Kira Willey. Welcome to the show.
Hi, Lisa. Thank you for having me.
It's so good to have you here. Thanks for being here. And I see is that Peaceful Panda in the background right there?
Peaceful like a panda, baby. There she is.
Peaceful like a panda. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm excited to talk with you today about all the wonderful things you create in the world. Yoga, music, books, how they all come together, and how those things can hopefully help people a little bit right now, because folks have been struggling. I don't know if you noticed, there's some stuff going on in the world.
Little bit. Yeah. Yep.
So let's just hear from you. What got you into yoga? That's something you and I both share.
Well, I got into yoga not until after college. I actually had been an athlete all my life. Soccer, I ran track, I was a hurdler. And so sports was a huge part of my life. And I got out of college and I was kind of like, grown-ups don't do the hurdles. This is I can't continue to do this.
Yeah.
And to be honest, I looked to yoga first as something to quote unquote stay in shape, like that was
Yeah.
it. Like I went to my first yoga class and I wish I could say that I fell madly in love with it and knew it was going to be my life's calling, but I didn't. I liked it. It was a slow burn for me.
Mm-hmm.
And I went back and it slowly started to sort of seep into me, the benefits and the transformation that a yoga practice and mindfulness could have. So, but I'll be honest, I went first for the completely physical benefits, after a lifetime of athletics but here I am, right? It definitely had its effect.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. I would
Mm.
say you're not alone in that story. A lot of folks are, attracted to yoga, or they go to it as part of a gym routine or something, and then the next thing and the next thing. Something I hear a lot too is just that next thing. People get sort of pulled into yoga, drawn into it. There's something about it. I didn't know you were an athlete. I used to play soccer too, and then it kind of does fizzle out once you get to college. If you're not going pro, it's just there's not as many places to go, but there's lots of yoga studios out there. So
It does. It was a huge part of my life. I was captain of the team, all American, all that kind of stuff. So it was a big, big deal for me, and quite a letdown when I kind of realized, okay, that chapter of my life is over. So getting into yoga and again, like that slow burn, ramping up and then growing to really love it, filled a big place that needed to be filled and grew into other things.
were there any moments that you remember where you were like, "Oh, yeah, I'm really in this yoga now," or like things that sort of pulled you deeper into it?
I had never had an experience of shavasana, in my life that was, you know, competitive athletics is all go, go, go and discipline and right and higher, faster, stronger, all that type of thing.
Yes.
So to
Yes.
have somebody instruct me to lie down and not move and just and literally just rest my body and rest, you know, that was like, I mean, at first, like I think many people, I was resistant.
Yeah.
I was like, well, I don't have time for this. What is
Yeah.
it? You know,
Get up, keep
this
going,
isn't
let it go.
right. Yeah, this isn't helping, you know, me get a tighter butt. Like, what are we doing here? Um, so that was also a bit of a ramp up and a real learning experience for me to just, oh, okay, we're allowed to just rest. We're allowed to just rest. Just be, just breathe. You know, be with our ourselves, be with our thoughts. And so that was a really different experience for me.
Yeah.
But now I think like maybe many people, my favorite part of the practice.
Yes, and as you're talking, you said "Just be and just breathe," which makes me think of one of my favorite songs of yours, which I've played and gets stuck in my head in a beautiful way a number of times.
Mm,
I feel like it captures something that, like you said, is sort of missing, especially in our development and our, fast-paced culture. We don't necessarily have a lot of time to just be and just breathe, and you have this beautiful way of, like, it's almost like a lullaby, a shavasana lullaby. I love that song so much. How did
thank
music
you.
become a part of your life? When did that start?
I've been a lifelong musician. I started playing violin at age 5, so I'm a classically trained violinist. And I've picked up other instruments along the way, guitar, mandolin, ukulele, and I always wrote little, you know, snippets of songs. I was always humming phrases. I always had melodies in my head, and I never did anything with it, you know, for a long time. And then um, after college, I got this horrible corporate job that was, I mean, a person and a job couldn't be more ill suited for each other. And finally got myself out of that after a couple of years and started teaching in a sort of a parent child, like a mommy and me music program in New York City.
Yeah.
And I took about an 80% pay cut from my corporate job to do that.
Yep.
And that part was hard, but the rest of it was magical because that's what I was supposed to be doing. You know, as soon as I got in there and I was teaching 20 classes a week to little ones, and I just absolutely loved it. And you know, and then I started really writing my own songs and performing at open mics and doing that whole thing in the West Village of Manhattan, and
Yes. I didn't
it
know
grew
that
from
either. I
there.
love it.
Hmm.
I can see it. I can so see you there, and I wish I could have gone and, like, seen a show. I feel like that's one of the best, places just for, like, show up at a place and get this really amazing music and a incredible experience and evening, so I'm
Oh
so glad
yeah,
you
and
had
what
that
an
experience.
experience back in the day at the bitter end and places like that, and where just all kinds of fellow independent musicians are doing the thing, and we all had our 20-minute set, and you know, we were the only ones in the audience for the other ones. Nobody
Yeah,
came to our
cheering each
shows
other
except for our
on at the end of the
boyfriends. Yeah,
day.
right. But it was great. It was a great
Yeah.
experience, and so the songwriting just grew from there. I just never stopped songwriting. Just my audience changed a little bit.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, they definitely the yoga kids weren't showing up down
Not
in
not at the
Greenwich
bitter end.
Village.
No, not at the bars, that's for sure. Yeah, and I didn't have little ones of my own then or anything, so but it was excellent
Right.
experience both on stage and for songwriting, that served me well for what I do now.
Yeah. How does music impact you when you're the listener or the one in the audience or just playing it, receiving it? What do you notice?
Oh, music moves me like you can't believe. I mean, music, I mean, I really feel like I am music. I hear music in my head all the time, even when it's not playing. I write songs in my head a lot. In fact, you know, if I am bored or tired and can't go to sleep or driving, you know, I am creating or playing music in my head. It's just part of me and always has been and always will be. So the easiest way for me to change my own mood or state if I need to is go to music that will have the desired effect. And I've always known that about myself. So if I
Yes.
really need a state, you know, sometimes you need to be in the feelings, and but other times you really kind of need to, you're done with being grumpy and you need to flip it on its head. I can go to music and it's going to do that for me. Um, and knowing that about myself
Mm,
and knowing how music affects our physiology, has helped me a lot with my work using music with children, because you can really affect the
Yes.
energy in a room, the mood in a room, the tone with music, with rhythm, with sound, depending on varying its tempo, its volume, its feeling, the kind of melody, all that kind of thing. So it really has a strong effect on me for sure, but also on other people, and that's what I use in my work.
It's so rich, and it makes me think of a lot of the work that I do with yoga and trauma recovery, where you're looking for a breath practice or a shape or what's going to create a transition that's desirable in this moment, right? So it's not like any set of feelings or states are bad, but sometimes, like you said, we're just in the feelings too much or too long, or
We're stuck in
we're
them. Hmm.
yeah, we feel kind of stuck or in a puddle and we can't get our way out. And so I love that it's like breath and movement and music can help us make that transition. And what I love as you're describing music is how, I mean, I've heard people describe it almost like this channeling process, like this tune just sort of comes to you. It just shows up and then it evolves. And so I'm thinking about that sort of magical inspired way that music comes through to us, but also the collaborative nature of it, of performing together in different instruments. And even if you're recording different things and layering them on top of each other, there's just like so much texture and so much richness to that. And that
Hmm.
whole artistic, synergy can then really communicate something, right? And offer literal vibrations, right, through our bodies to create a shift.
Hmm. There's nothing I love more than creating music with other people. I mean, nothing. I mean, I
Yes.
lead choirs, and pre-pandemic, I founded something called Choir and Company, which is
Mm,
we did events with we got sort of non-singers, just regular people who love to sing together
yeah.
for an evening, and I would teach them a song, and we'd sort of perform it for ourselves at the end of the night. And we did it for fundraisers and charities and corporate events and stuff. And people, there's so much joy that's created when you make music together with other people. I mean, and it's actually, it's not just a feeling, it's literal scientific, it's hormones being released, it's oxytocin, it's dopamine, it's endorphins, it's all that good stuff. It brings out such incredible joy to create music with other people. So while I love doing music on my own and I'll always do it, there's nothing better than creating with others, and that
Mm,
collaboration and that feeling of making music together. It's really powerful.
yes, and it's a very full person, full body experience, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
It's
And
funny
very
as you're
mindful.
talking.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's reminding me of this moment I had actually with my brother Matt when I lived in Italy during college and my brothers came out to visit and we were traveling around northern Italy and I had some song in my head, like a pop song, and he was a musician, so very like deep in it, and had opinions at times, like, oh, like this isn't that pop song. It's so easy, like there's no complexity to it. So I had some pop songs stuck in my head, and I don't remember which one it was. And he's like, I could say anything to you right now, and you would get it stuck in your head. He's like, I can give you an earworm right now. He's like, how about if you want my socks? I was like, what?
What?
And so, no joke, within probably 5 minutes, like, it was in there. He got this earworm in my head, so we ended up writing an entire song, and this is the only time I'm not a songwriter, I'm not a musician. I love music, I like to sing, I don't usually expose other people to listening to me, but, like, that was my experience and my memory of collaborative songwriting, because then we ended up writing an entire song. He went on to, like, make verses and lyrics. I actually have it recorded now, the Socks song.
Oh, I gotta hear.
But
I
it's
gotta
such
hear
a
that
dear.
song. I gotta hear
I
it.
know, I'll have to
Sounds
play it for
amazing.
you. It's so amazing, yeah, and then one Christmas, he gave me the 73-minute version where he just, like, looped it over and over and started throwing weird things in the background. That one's, like, burned on CD somewhere. I really have to find it and get it on the computer, but anyhow, I feel like that there's this relational element to it, right? There's like a
Mm,
spark, there's a playfulness, there's a fun, there's an unknown, like, hey, we're just going to create something together right here.
mhm.
And you mentioned mindfulness earlier, and that's such a big part of both of our worlds, but it's this like really organic, natural, fun form of mindfulness is kind of how I'm thinking of it.
100%. Yeah. And when you collaborate with others, and I love songwriting with other people, you just, yeah, you never know what's going to happen. You literally never know what's going to happen. Someone will give you a groove, and all of a sudden a melody pops in someone's head, and someone else contributes the rhythm, and all of a sudden you just created a thing that didn't exist 5 minutes earlier. It's really remarkable.
I get the chills because we've been using the words unprecedented and uncertain a lot in the last few years, and
Mm,
it's this wonderful manifestation of that. You walk in and you're like, this is uncertain and this is unprecedented, and how beautiful, right? How wonderful
right.
that we're just going to create something we have no idea what it is at this point.
Hmm.
So, how and when did music, yoga, and working with kids together come about for you?
Yeah. So I was teaching music at that parent-child program and really working hard, teaching 20 or so classes a week. And I saw a um, an ad for a children's yoga teacher training. And I just started my own yoga practice. I was going, as we said, mostly for those like physical benefits. I wouldn't call myself, I wasn't sort of really into it. But that just hit me. I was like, "Oh, I'm gonna do that. I'm gonna do that." And it was
Mm,
expensive, and that was a stretch at that time for me, but I did it, and I just knew that's what I was gonna do. And I also knew that when I started teaching, when I got my certification, started teaching, that I would teach with music because that was comfortable for me. And sure enough, when I got my certification and I started teaching anywhere that would have me, which was not very many places at that time, I brought my guitar because I was so comfortable. For me, it
yes.
was honestly like a bit of a crutch. It was really comfortable for me to hold a guitar. And what was
Yeah.
uncomfortable for me was to be in a room with 25 6 year olds like that.
Yes.
I just had my first child, so she was still teeny. I didn't have a lot of experience with that management. Um, so I started using music and I started singing my instructions and I started creating the songs, and it's just a magical combination. Attaching information to a melody makes it so memorable, makes it really fun, makes it really engaging. There's all kinds of science behind more parts of kids' brains lighting up when they're processing music than when they're just doing auditory processing. So, all kinds of science behind it, but you don't need to know
Mm.
the science to see that it works really quickly and really effectively. And it was just a magical combination.
I really appreciate this because, I'm in the world of trauma-informed yoga, and we can sort of lean towards, I wanna say rigidity in that thinking, "Okay, we're trying to keep people safe. Music can be triggering for some people, so let's never play music," or,
Hmm.
"Touch can be triggering, so we'll never do that." And so I've definitely known people who use music or even use touch in a very well-trained, consensual, clear way, with people who've experienced trauma. And so I'm thinking about music as you're describing it as just this other tool, right? That you can bring in to really engage physiologically with folks. Like there's a lot of unknown in there because if someone just walks into a classroom, you don't know their history, you don't know,
Right.
what might be more helpful or more challenging for them. But I'm wondering if have you ever seen someone have like a negative reaction to music, or have you ever had someone come to a class or say, "Oh, I'm not going to come to the class because there's music in it"?
I haven't. I have,
Mm.
and in all my time with children, I'm very careful to teach, through a trauma informed lens. And I've,
Yeah.
taken a number of trainings and read a number of books. I wouldn't call myself an expert on the subject by any means, but I have educated myself enough to know how to teach through it from a trauma informed perspective. So I'm very careful to do that. I don't require, closed eyes or a certain position or anything like that. But
Yeah.
I haven't had a negative experience with music, but I think I'm very, very savvy at um, with my music choices, and I
Yes.
can I can read a room really well,
Yeah.
and I now have had nearly 2 decades of experience working with young children, so I can really feel, for lack of a better word, what's going to work and what isn't. And I'm also able
Yeah.
to really quickly pivot if I see it's just not really
Yes.
working for the room or even one child in particular. So I think it's born of experience, but I've been fortunate enough not to have a negative reaction like that. I could totally understand how it could be possible, but I haven't.
Yeah. I'm wondering if there's an example that comes to mind around that pivot. Is it like a kid starting to look distracted or agitated, or maybe the pace is too fast or too slow? Does something come to mind?
100%. So I always teach, I train a lot of teachers, and I always train them when they're using music, rhythm, and sound in the classroom to meet the energy where it is and then take it where you want it to go, right? Don't try to fight,
Yes.
right? Don't
Yes.
try to fight the energy in the room. If you walk into a room and the
Yes.
children are bouncing off the walls, do not start singing a lullaby. It is not going to work, right? It's
Yes.
the opposite of what's
I
going
feel
on.
like I just said the same thing in a workshop I was teaching last weekend. Same thing,
Okay,
different words.
brilliant. So, right, and
Yeah.
conversely, if the energy is really low and everyone's lying all over the floor, but you need them to get up and focus, you know,
Yes.
don't right. Just so meeting the energy where it is, but realizing that you're driving the bus and you take it where you want
Yes.
it to go. So if the energy is really high, I will start with a clapping game and we'll start clapping really fast. And I say, clap with me, clap, clap, and keep track. And then once I have them all doing it, then I'll slow it down.
Yep.
I'll slow it, stay with me, slow it down,
Yep.
and until you're like this, and they're all waiting for the clap. But now you've got all their attention. You can feel it, right? You've got their focus. You've got right, and then you, and all of a sudden you took a room of, you know, kids who are really, really had a lot of scattered high energy and brought it into
Yes.
focus and took it where you want it to go. So it's all about meeting that energy where it is. Don't fight against it
100%.
and taking it where you want to
100%.
go. And your choice of music and rhythm and song has a huge effect on that. You choose the right
Yep.
piece of music, and that is your best friend, right? I mean, that's why I create songs that are just for this. I have a song called All I Want to Do Is Dance. And it's really high energy, and we dance, and we jump, and we skip, and we shake, and then we shake faster, we shake faster, and we shake faster, and then we freeze. And they're all like, "Oh my gosh!" It's because it's so exciting to freeze. And then,
Yeah.
we freeze like a block of ice, but then we melt, and then we melt, and then
Nice.
we melt, and then all of a sudden you're calm and you're lying on the floor. But you had 2 minutes of really high energy motion, got those yayas out, melted to the ground,
Yes.
calm and focused. So I design, now I'm at the point where I write songs, I create resources that actually do that for teachers. So here's my song. This is going to help you take that high energy and take it where you want to go. So using it as a
Yeah.
tool to help you meet that energy and direct it.
I love that, and it's like you're a trauma-informed master conductor, because, I mean, this
I
is
love
like
that.
I was teaching a trauma-informed workshop, right? I just
Mhm.
see you up there, like, conducting the energy of the room,
Mhm.
and I love what you said too of "You're driving the bus." I just had this moment, I was like, "Is that the name of your next book, Kira? You're driving the bus." I love
That's
it,
good.
right? Because
Yeah.
I was a kid, I loved bus stuff. Everything on the bus and the yellow bus, and
Sure.
I don't know why they didn't have seatbelts. I hope they have seatbelts now,
I
but
don't
I
think
remember
so.
being on the yellow bus
Yeah.
and loving it. Yeah, right, I don't understand that, but that's a whole other topic.
Mhm.
But I love that image of you're driving the bus, and I just picture you as you're talking conducting, right? And you think of an orchestra and how there's so many pieces happening, just like in a room
Mhm.
with kids, there's so much going on, but you can take what's happening, meet it, and then give it a direction, give it something to do, give it somewhere to go. And you also have an intention. You are uh, facilitating or creating a shift or an experience or
Mhm.
something, right? And so there's power and there's agency in that, and it's not just always do this or never do that, and it's not just I'm going to show up and do whatever, right? Or I'm just going to do the plan. It's this beautiful relational experience of, okay, I see we're really up right now. Let's get our yayas out. Let's dance. Let's move. And the other thing I love about this is it's giving us opportunities, like actual lived experiences of moving in and out of different states in our nervous system, in our whole body. Like, oh, I can dance, 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 and freeze, and that can feel really exciting, right? And I can melt like an ice cube to the floor, and I can actually ask my body to do these things, and they can be fun. I love it. All of that. Everything you're saying just matches up so much with so many of the things I teach.
I love it. That's great.
So I'm wondering what do you see right now kids struggling the most with in the classroom, or whether you're working with teachers and they're coming to you with questions? What are you seeing some of the biggest challenges be?
What I'm hearing from teachers and principals and school administrators and school counselors is anxiety. Anxiety, anxiety, anxiety
Mm,
from even very young children. And I was hearing that before the pandemic, you know. And I was hearing,
Sure.
I'd have a school counselor call me. He said, I've been in this job for 17 years. And in the past couple of years, I've never seen these young children so anxious. And so imagine what that school
Oh.
counselor is saying now, after 2 years of,
Mhm.
lots of remote learning and all that stuff. I had a principal, I just spoke to her last week. I used to go to her school about twice a year and I do big assemblies for music and yoga for children. And I also train their teachers. And she said, I have kindergartners who have literally never been in a school building before, or first graders who have,
Wow.
right? Because there was a year and a half at least of remote schooling, and now they come in and they can only see eyeballs, and it's just like, so she's having to, she can't do her regular job. She's now having to help these
Mhm.
children who are so anxious and behind in some ways in their skills, in their social emotional development. um, and she just, she called me up and she's like, help, 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 like,
Yep.
how can we help
Yeah.
these children who are so anxious, who are so worried, who don't understand what's going on in the world. Now we're hearing about, wars, and I mean, it's just a lot, right, for littles, and for
Yes.
the parents and teachers and family members who are trying to help them. So I'm doing a series of virtual visits with her school, where I am giving the children and the teachers lots of really simple, calming mindfulness exercises to do. Really fun, really simple.
Yeah.
And just like we were just talking about, some of them are up and some of them involve movement, and have some more sort of active, that are more active than others. Others are really grounding and calming. And I give them examples of
Mhm.
when you can use these different ones. Like when you're outside, and you're moving and moving, try to listen to, what do you hear in the trees? What does the wind sound like? Or what is the understanding that mindfulness doesn't have to be sitting on a cushion with a candle lit, right? Mindfulness is a way
Yes.
of being in the world. It's a way of paying attention to what's happening right now in our bodies, in our minds, and all around us. So how can we practice mindfulness? Here are all these different ways, and they can really help us calm down, and they can really help us focus our energy, and they can help us get rid of some of that stress we don't need, right? So it's just talking about it to children in a way that first graders can understand, giving them lots of practical examples,
Yes.
and giving their teachers things that they can take from it, so they can do it without me there. So it becomes ongoing skill, tools in their toolbox, as opposed to just something they can only do when I'm in front of
Right, at an assembly or,
them.
extra big Zoom meeting or something. So that was a question I was wondering too, is how do you see, like, what's the pipeline for these skills to get into teachers, to get just for them to be accessible for kids? Because I feel like everything with kids goes through some adults, and
Hmm.
then when we're talking about schools, there's, government and institution and businesses involved. So how do you see those skills getting into the hands of children?
That's a great question. And unfortunately, educational policy is typically made by non teachers, right? It's made by
Yeah,
lawmakers in big buildings far away, people who have not
yeah,
been in the trenches, have not spent time in the classroom. So, that's a whole thing, that's a whole conversation. But I would say that lots of times I get asked to come in and teach mindfulness in a school, and I'll say, that's great, and I'm happy to do that. But what would be way more effective is if I come train your teachers to deliver
yeah.
mindfulness. And they think, oh, I can't do that. I say, no, 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 no. You do not need to go to a 2 week mindfulness retreat on a mountaintop. You do not need to have any special training. Listen, just, you know, get with your children, pretend your bear is hibernating for the winter, and take long, deep breaths for a minute. You'll be amazed at what it does.
Mhm.
And that's mindfulness.
Yeah,
And they're like, oh my gosh. So I say, let me train your teachers. So it's first of all removing the preconceived notions about mindfulness with quotes around it. That's like a whole thing,
yes,
and just
yes.
uh, defining it for them and giving them really practical examples of what it is. And you can start now, not tomorrow or next week or in 6 months. You can start right now, right this minute.
Yeah,
And when I give this presentation to teachers, I define it for them. So I demystify it, and I give them these practical examples. They're like, oh, like we had no idea, first of all, really what it was. Second,
yeah,
how that I can do it with children, my students right now, and third, the benefits. I'll rattle off a few studies that with children that show them the benefits, the how it 4 deep breaths, there was a study not long ago in young children, can alter their stress physiology significantly. They're like, 4 deep breaths,
Mhm.
and I say, 4 deep breaths, so and getting the research. So it's just giving them that the information and then letting them go, because again, the studies also show that the primary relationship haver, it's not the right phrase, but you know what I mean, with the child is the one
Yep.
who's most effective at delivering these types of interventions. It's not me who comes in once
Yeah.
every 6 months to the school. It's the teacher who's with those children every day. That's where the most effective
Yeah.
intervention comes from. So it's just empowering teachers. And I have said a million times, and I'll say it again, as far as public education, this stuff should not be mindfulness and social emotional learning should not be extra or enrichment. It should be essential learning in every public school.
Yes.
Every public school.
Wholeheartedly agree.
Yeah. Hmm.
Yeah, I spent a lot of time working
So,
in public and private schools and juvenile halls and settings with youth, and it is really sad when you see things come down to, "Oh, well, we have to prepare for this standardized test, so, math and English and maybe science," like, when there's just this sort of washing out of mindfulness, of social emotional learning, and of the arts too, and so I love that you're bringing all 3 of those together and noticing how, the biggest question people are coming with is, okay, the kids are there's anxiety, which of course there is given everything that's going on. And then you
mhm.
say, yes, and here's these tools that can be an essential part of learning that can help with that in 4 deep breaths, like can help with that in so many
Yeah,
ways.
you can't tell me you don't have time to do that. Because a lot of the reaction I'll get sometimes is, "Oh, I don't have time. Don't put one more thing on my plate. I'm
Yeah.
required to do this, this, and this, and we already can't fit in the curriculum and blah, blah, blah." And I get that. And
Yeah.
here's my response. When you practice this consistently for 1 minute at the beginning of each, class period, you will get that time back and then some,
Yes.
because your children will be so much calmer,
Yes.
more grounded. You will be more productive and efficient in the classroom.
My response internally is, "You don't have time not to do this." Like, you have so many other
Right,
demands that it's
right,
essential that this happens so that you can get to all these other things, right? Because without those, you're wrangling a whole lot of different, physiological states and things happening without even really knowing how or that you're trying to do it, and it's
right.
gets in the way of these other goals and makes everyone, I think, a little more stressed out.
I get calls a lot from, it sort of as like treatment instead of prevention, if you will. So, like,
Mm.
we're having PSATs, which are the horrible, in my opinion, standardized tests here in Pennsylvania. Third graders, right? Undergoing this really rigorous standardized testing, which makes my head want to explode. But anyway,
Yes.
so can you come in after the, PSATs and help the children? And I'm kind of like, well, first of all, let's maybe get rid of the PSATs. But second, if you're practicing this, consistently, it's not like a treatment measure that you throw on to an anxious bunch of children. If this is a tool in your toolbox and you practice it consistently, though you're not going to see such a display of highly anxious and stressed out behaviors, right? It's going to work as a preventive tool. Then you'll be able to notice when it's happening, and children will have the self-awareness to, nip it in the bud when they're feeling really dysregulated. So it's a mindset shift, I think, to a
Mhm.
consistent practice. It becomes a preventative um, intervention, as opposed to, oh my gosh, I'm really stressed out. Okay, now let's figure out some mindfulness right now in this moment. No, that's not the moment.
Yeah.
It's the consistent practice, making it a habit, making it a routine, that becomes really effective.
Right, and you zoom out to see what's the general tone of this classroom or whatever the setting is, and if the tone is crisis most of the time, and then you're just looking for a little relief from that crisis, "Oh, well, after the test, can you help them come back down? Can you help them feel a little better so they can move
Mhm.
on to the next thing?" If you flip that, and I'm 100% with you, I mean, prevention and early intervention, are my jam. So, can you make the foundation calm? Can you make the foundation
Right.
flexible and responsive and able to engage so that when there's a crisis, maybe from that foundation, you go up and come back down to your baseline rather than being at this high crisis baseline where you just dip down and try to get a little relief after every moment, after every challenging moment.
100%. Yeah. That's a perfect description of where a lot of early childhood classrooms live, in pretty much a constant dysregulated state, and just occasionally, finding that calm and that that regulation, and looking to flip that on its head.
Right. Yeah, there's so much I could say about that. I mean, even the way, we can get into how children are fed throughout the day and the things that children tend to want to eat and why and how that might fold in, but that's a whole other trajectory. I'm curious about
Mhm.
parents. What do you say? I mean, parents have been in a sense the school teachers for the last couple of years with homeschooling and online
Right.
learning, and so how do you see parents folding into this, and do you work with parents? What do you offer there?
Yeah, I work with parents. I mean, not as much as I do with children, but I get a lot of emails and things from parents, and a lot of parents write reviews of my books, and I go and read those because it's really helps me understand where they're coming from and what they found useful. And I would say that, similar to teachers, you want the mindset to be, here's a habit that we can get into. Here's a practice that we do every morning in the car on the way to school. Here's what we do we spend 1 minute with these deep breaths and maybe practicing some gratitude before every meal. Here's what, making it some tiny little baby step in your day that you will consistently do, um, will yield such benefits. And just attaching it to something that's already in your routine.
Yeah.
So Peaceful Like a Panda, I organized the mindfulness exercises by time of day for that reason. So
Nice.
there's rise and shine, there's playtime, there's brain boosters. So whatever time of the day you are, you go pick a practice. They're 60 seconds or less, and
Mhm.
attach it to that thing that you always do at that part of the day. You're in the car, you're, getting into bed at story time or whatever, and do that practice and make it a consistent habit. Then you have it in your toolbox when the what hits the fan, and you can
Mhm.
say, "Oh, okay, now remember bear breath, how we do that every night before bed? Let's do bear breath right now. Let's do bear breath. I can see you're really feeling, upset. Let's try bear breath." And you know how to do it because you've been doing it every evening at bedtime. So it's finding
Mhm.
that little baby practice that you can put in consistently and just make part of your family's culture, family's language, yields really incredible benefits.
Yes, 100%. This podcast is about healing, right? And I'm wondering if, like, what words people use, whether it's school teachers or parents or kids themselves. Like, what do you think they're looking for when they're coming to you for help? They're coming for help with anxiety, but what's the other side of that?
That's a really good question. I would say there's almost, I want to say the word comfort
Mm,
and
mhm.
soothing. Like, I hear the word, especially around my music with children, I hear the word soothing a lot. I think
Yes.
people are looking for that, you know, that the music that gives them a hug, right? And I'll get
Mhm.
a lot of correspondences like, my child couldn't settle down to go to sleep, and I played, your song Just Be or whatever, and it really calms her. Or calm, I think, is
Mm.
another really good word. I think they're looking for calm and comfort and to be soothed in this very turbulent world. I think young children, sort of back in the day, used to be kept much more in a bubble of childhood.
Yes.
And unfortunately, with so much media coming at them from every direction, and many grown-ups not knowing enough or not able to shield them from it, right? The TV's on, the radio's on in the car, the internet, the this or that, the other thing. They're not shielded from things that they should be shielded from long enough.
Mhm.
So I feel like young children, whether they can articulate it or not, are looking for calm and for comfort from the turbulent world, because they're not ready. They're not ready to face what's going on in the world, right? They'll grow up and they'll
Yeah.
be ready. But I think that's what they're looking for, and I think that parents, whether they can articulate it or not, are also looking for that. So, I seek to soothe and calm and comfort with my resources, um, and give coping skills to both parents, teachers, and to children so that when they grow up to face that world, they're ready. Because if you think about what these children are going to face, we don't know what the world's going to look like in 10 or 20 years, right?
Mhm.
But I can tell you that, you know, knowing the capital of New Zealand is not going to be as important as knowing how to calm yourself, to release stress that is not serving you, and to be able to focus and pay attention and
Mhm.
therefore make good choices. Those things are going to be important no matter what, right? That's
Absolutely.
why I call this essential learning. A lot of the other learning that children spend so much time, certainly in public education, those facts and figures are available at the click of a button,
Yeah.
you know? But these coping skills, these tools for children to calm themselves and focus themselves and soothe themselves are skills that need to be taught and need to be practiced.
Yes. I was gonna ask you what you would say to the people who are supporting youth and young children, but I think I'm gonna guess the answer, which is I'm guessing you would say that they can practice these for themselves first. But is there anything else you would add to that, or am I off here?
No, 100%. I do tell teachers that you can't teach the children mindfulness if you don't buy into it. If you're
Yeah,
if you just like press play on the audio mindful moment and then go check your phone, not going to work. Not going to work, right? You need to model it,
yeah.
you need to practice it, you need to buy into it. So whenever I do trainings with teachers, I always start by saying, okay, what little baby mindfulness practice can you implement in your own day, in your own life? Is that arriving at the school 5 minutes early and sitting in your quiet car and breathing, right? Is that getting to your classroom a little early with the lights off and just taking a few deep breaths? Is it a walk around the school before you enter the building just to gather yourself and leave what's home at home and get present to share? What is it that little, and we brainstorm and we come up with ideas and I make them write something down that they're going to, but just some small practice that they'll commit to so that they can come show up from a place of being centered and present and then be able
Mhm.
to help children learn these skills as well.
I appreciate that you brought in the definition of mindfulness and that that's part
Mm,
of the trainings you offer. I'm thinking about, right now it's transitioning slowly into spring. And so I'm starting to see more blossoms on the trees. And even that moment of noticing what's happening around you in your immediate environment, noticing the seasons change, noticing if you do see something like for me, I love looking up and seeing like magnolia or a cherry blossom. Like it's just such a moment for me. And if I'm in that really like up, crisis go go, you don't see it. You're just
mhm,
in tunnel vision moving to the next thing, but for me, just if I'm going on a walk by myself or with my dogs and I give myself that moment to appreciate what I see and to connect with it and to even smell the blossoms or,
mhm.
walk back and take another whiff where there's that area where the scent is, like those kinds of things to me feel like really essential mindfulness practices in my day and maybe they're even more powerful than, sitting cross-legged and noticing my breath. They feel like there's more connection there.
Mhm.
And so I appreciate that, as you're teaching folks and inviting teachers and parents to try this as well, there's like an invitation. It doesn't have to look a certain way. You can connect it to, "Well, you already walk your dog in the morning. Well, what's something you can connect with there? And how can you build in these micro habits around things you're already doing?" I think it just makes it so much more accessible and it doesn't feel like an extra to do. Well, I got to sit down for 10 or 20 minutes and I have to check that box
Yeah.
before I can go and walk the dog, right?
No, you can do almost anything you already do mindfully. And so it's dispelling that notion of, like you said, sitting cross-legged, on a cushion like this and oming for 20. No, I mean, that's great. If that's what you want to do, fantastic. But you
Yeah.
can practice mindfulness while eating, right?
Yeah.
As you notice the
Yep.
texture and what does it look like and how does it feel in your mouth and right? But how many of us get our food and then we put our laptop right here and we're like, right, shoveling in the food? Or I mean, guilty as charged, right? But
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
can so it's first of all explaining that mindfulness, it's a way of being, it's a way of moving through the world. It can involve movement. It can involve walking outside. It can involve noticing the cherry blossoms. And second, understanding that the reason that it helps us feel more centered and calm and grounding is when you're present in the moment, you're not thinking about the past and you're not worrying about the future. And those are
Right.
the two things that most often make us feel like this. We're usually doing one of those two things. So if
Yeah.
by noticing those beautiful blossoms on the trees, you bring yourself into the present moment, all of a sudden you've stopped worrying about what's going to happen tomorrow, right? And you've stopped dwelling on that conversation you had yesterday. So I think just defining this for parents and teachers and people who work with children is so helpful because they get it, right? And they get that mindfulness is just it's a way of moving through the world. Here's why it's helpful. Here's how simple it is. Start now.
Yeah. I love how earlier it came about, like, there's this unprecedented and, unknown feeling, and that creativity
Mm.
can be this playful, amazing, awe-inspiring way to engage with those emotions. I'm wondering, what do you think creativity can do for us now or can teach us now?
Creativity is self-expression. It's using your voice, right? And I think that when things go crazy in the world and when things are forced upon us that we don't like lockdowns, like, you know, masks and we can't go to school and all the other things, it becomes even more important to use our voice, right? And so that
Yeah.
creativity, that self expression, especially for young children, and especially for children in public education, which still is just operates on, in my opinion, antiquated model of one to many, right? And sitting at a desk and
Yeah.
receiving information. So it's this very typically a very one way exchange. And
Right.
I believe that young children are not asked nearly enough for their opinion, for their voice,
Yeah.
for their input. And so at every session that I teach, every class that I teach, I find a way to invite. And it's usually involves, since it's me, music and rhythm, right? So that's a rhythm game where I start and I say, You go, your turn. What's your rhythm, right? Or we make up a yoga pose. What's your pose going to be? Or we make up a dance. What's invite, right? It doesn't need to be asking them for their verbal opinion. It can be asking them to show
Yes.
me a movement with their bodies, a rhythm that they've created, and you'll learn so much about them by what they bring forth, right? Because they're gonna
Yes.
what's living in them is gonna come out in their rhythm or their movement. So I think that creativity in all ways is incredibly important, especially for children and especially now.
Yeah. 100%. I love one thing you said in there, which was because it's me, because I've worked with so many yoga teachers that I think are looking for the template, or they're looking for, in a training, they wanna go through and be like, "Okay, tell me what to do, tell me how to be," and it's like, you do still need to be yourself. Like,
Mm,
that's actually super, super important, and so I really appreciate, like, well, because it's me, we're gonna be doing
it's
rhythm,
good.
we're gonna be singing,
Yep, 100%.
and, like, this is me being who I am, and I think that is such a great example. We teach through our invitations and our conversations, and we also teach through our example of, "Hey, this is me self-expressing while I'm with you,"
Right,
and then that gives this permission for other people to say, "Hey, this is me being me. Hey, this is me being me." And and then I just feel like there's so much permission and growth and like a skirting of so many other challenges that could come up when we can be in that space of, "This is just me."
right. I agree. I love that.
So I know we gotta wrap up in a second here, but I just have a couple more questions. What gives you hope right now?
What gives me hope is the amount of educators and other grown-ups who are bringing this work to children, who believe really strongly in it. I have a membership called
Yeah.
Rock and Yoga, where educators who bring yoga, mindfulness, and social emotional learning to children come together, and these people give me hope because they just believe so strongly in it. They're out there working every day in preschools and YMCA's and libraries and you name it to bring these practices
Yep.
to children. And I think it's growing. I think it really is growing. So that gives me hope.
Yeah. That's great. Rock and yoga.
Hmm.
And what's next for you? Are you kind of leaning more into that mentorship and training through rock and yoga? Are you performing your music? What's coming up for you?
Yeah, luckily the school performances are starting to come back, which is great. I have a bunch booked
Yay!
this spring. I've really missed being in big, horribly lit school gyms with 400 children.
Yes.
I'm just it's it's crazy and
Yes.
awesome all at the same
Yeah.
time. So, um, I have another children's mindfulness, my 7th, due out next year. That's wrapping up, production right now, which is great. I have a 6th and a
Great.
7th album coming out this year. I wrote a song for every exercise in this book, Peaceful Like a Panda. So those will be out. I'm loving this membership, and I'm inspired to just keep creating resources, for them too. So definitely in a period of high creativity. So, um,
Prolific.
right? Yeah.
Prolific.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's incredible. You have so many resources available. And I've just downloaded your music easily online and on my phone, and I love having it handy. And there's dogs in the house and a 19-year-old, but we don't have any youth. My inner child listens to your music.
It's all good. I appreciate it. I love it. That's good. Well,
So how can people
I
find
wrote it.
you?
I hoped that adults would, the key about children's music is making sure that the grown-ups like it too, because, you know, if not, you're in trouble
Repeat.
as an artist. Exactly. Right. Repeat.
Yes.
So
Yeah, it'll be on
it's gotta
repeat
be
for
palatable for
a good chunk of
everybody.
time there.
Everybody.
Oh,
Yeah.
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 It reminds me of a few of my friends' kids who, like, I've gotten the album because 'cause I've heard it so many times. I'm like, "Okay, I kinda like this, yeah."
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
like, "Wasn't made for me,
Mhm.
but I can rock it. It's fine." So, how can people connect with you?
Yeah, kirawilley.com, KIRAWILLEY. You can learn all about me and my programs and my resources. You can find my books anywhere they sell books. You can find my music anywhere you can get music. So whether that's Spotify or Apple Music, it's all good. It's available everywhere. And I'll provide a free page of resources, some audio mindfulness tracks for your listeners, and so you can put that link in
Great.
your show notes. And those are just, it's literally my voice reading a really simple, child-friendly mindfulness exercise with some pretty music in the background. You just press play, do it with your child, and find some find some calm, find some grounding. So I'll link you all to that.
I love it. Thank you so much, Kira, for everything you
Likewise.
do and for all the youth you're supporting. I know when I used to work with young people, there's a sense of passing things on, of
Mhm.
opportunity when things come in at a young age that, the possibility of where that can go. So I know that the work that you're doing has a really powerful impact, and I also know that sometimes when you're doing the work and offering trainings, you don't always see the results of that. So I just wanna reflect that to you that I know there's a lot of people out there who've been impacted by you, by your music and your books and all the wonderful things you teach. So thank you.
Thank you. I really appreciate you saying that. Thank you for having me. This has been a wonderful conversation.
Yes, yes. I just have so much love for you, Kira, and I look forward to talking to you again soon. And we'll put your website and all your resources in the show notes so folks can find you easily.
All right. Thanks, Lisa.
Thanks, Kira. You're amazing. Thanks so much for listening. My hope is that you walk away from these episodes feeling supported and like you have a place to come to find the hope and inspiration you need to take your next small step forward. I do want to make sure it's clear that this podcast isn't offering any prescriptions. It's not advice or any kind of diagnosis. Your decisions are in your hands, and we encourage you to consult with any relevant healthcare professionals you may need to support you through your unique path of healing. For more information and resources, please visit my website, howwecanheal.com. There, you'll find tons of helpful resources and the full transcript of each show. You can also click the podcast menu to submit requests for upcoming topics and guests. Before we wrap, I want to send thanks to our guests today, to Christine O'Donnell and Celine Baumgartner of Bright-Sided Podcasting, and to everyone who helped support this podcast, directly and indirectly. Alex, thanks for taking the dogs out while I record. I'd also like to give a shout out to my brother Matt. He passed away in 2002. He wrote this music and recorded it, and it makes my heart so happy to share it with you now.